The Second Libyan Civil War is an ongoing conflict between four rival organizations seeking to control Libya. The internationally recognized government of the Council of Deputies that was elected democratically in 2014, also known as the Tobruk government, and internationally known formally as the Libyan government. This government has the loyalty of the Libyan army under the command of General Officer Khalifa Haftar and has been supported by airstrikes by Egypt and the UAE. The rival Islamist government of the new General National Congress based in the capital Tripoli, led by the Muslim Brotherhood, backed by the wider Islamist coalition known as Libya Dawn, and aided by Qatar, Sudan, and Turkey. The Islamist Shura Council of Benghazi revolutionaries, led by Ansar al-Sharia. They have had the support of the new General National Congress and the unrecognized government in Tripoli led by former Prime Minister Omar al-Hussein, stating that Ansar al-Sharia are simple, beautiful and amiable, as well as being engaged in missionary work. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant's Libyan provinces, as well as two smaller organizations seeking to control small parts of Libya. The Tuareg militias of Gat, controlling desert areas in the southwest. Local forces in Misrata district, controlling the towns of Bani Walid and Tawiga. The belligerents are coalitions of armed groups that sometimes change sides. At the beginning of 2014, Libya was governed by the General National Congress after the election of 2012. Since then, Islamist parties had controlled the assembly, outmaneuvering the majority centrists and liberals, and electing Nouri Abu Samain as president of the GNC in June 2013. According to some, Abu Samain abused his powers to suppress debates and inquiries. In December 2013, the GNC voted to enforce a variant of Sharia law and decided to extend its 18-month mandate for a year until the end of 2014. On the 14th of February 2014, in a coup attempt, General Khalifa Haftar, who served under the former regime of Muammar Gaddafi, called on the GNC to dissolve and for the formation of a caretaker government committee to oversee new elections. In May 2014, forces loyal to General Haftar launched a large-scale air and ground offensive codenamed Operation Dignity against Islamist armed groups in Benghazi, and against the GNC in Tripoli. In June, the GNC called for new elections to a Council of Deputies. Islamists were defeated, but rejected the results of the election, which saw only an 18% turnout. The conflict escalated on 13 July 2014, when Tripoli's Islamists and Misratan militias launched Operation Libya Dawn to seize Tripoli International Airport, capturing it from the Zintan militia on 23 August. Shortly thereafter, members of the General National Congress, whom had rejected the June election, reconvened as new General National Congress and voted themselves as replacement of the newly elected Council of Deputies, with Tripoli as their political capital, Nouri Abu Samain as president and Omar al-Hussein as prime minister. As a consequence, the majority of the Council of Deputies was forced to relocate to Tobruk, aligning itself with Haftar's forces and eventually nominating him army chief. On 6 November, the Supreme Court in Tripoli, dominated by the new GNC, declared the Council of Deputies dissolved. The Council of Deputies rejected this ruling as made under threat. On 16 January 2015, Operation Dignity and Libya Dawn factions agreed on a ceasefire. The country is now led by two separate governments, with Tripoli and Misrata controlled by forces loyal to Libya Dawn and the new GNC in Tripoli, while the international community recognizes Abdullah al-Thani's government and its parliament in Tobruk. Benghazi remains contested between pro-Haftar forces and radical Islamists. On 15 February, ISIL in Libya released a video showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians the group had previously captured. Egyptian authorities carried out airstrikes on ISIL targets in Libya in response to the executions. Background of discontent with General National Congress. At the beginning of 2014, Libya was governed by the General National Congress. The GNC had become the subject of considerable discontent for, among other things, allegedly being dominated by Islamists, despite that group's holding of only a minority of seats in the GNC, channeling government funds towards some Islamist armed groups and allowing others to conduct assassinations and kidnappings, suppressing inconvenient debates and inquiries in the Congress by removing them from the congressional agenda, voting to declare Sharia law and establishing a special committee to review all existing laws to guarantee they comply with Islamic law, imposing gender segregation and compulsory hijab at Libyan universities, and refusing to hold new elections when its electoral mandate expired in January 2014 until after Khalifa Haftar launched a military offensive against it. Alleged GNC relationship with Islamist armed groups. The GNC was perceived to be channeling government funding towards some Islamist armed groups and allowing others to operate with impunity. It was alleged that funding was particularly channeled towards the Libya Revolutionaries Operations Room, which Nouri Abu Salmain set up himself. In Benghazi, the GNC was perceived to be turning a blind eye to the expansion of armed Islamist groups, notably Ansar al-Sharia, the group linked to the assassination of the U.S. ambassador to Libya in September 2012. The GNC was believed by its opponents to be allowing Islamist groups to conduct assassinations and kidnappings, especially in Benghazi. Prominent Islamist incidents in 2013-14 included the kidnapping of Prime Minister Ali Zaidan in October 2013, and the kidnapping of Egyptian diplomats in January 2014. Both incidents were carried out by the LROR. In October 2013, following the kidnapping of the Prime Minister, Abu Salmain used his presidency to change the agenda of the GNC in order to prevent a debate over disestablishing the LROR. At the same time, he cancelled a request to establish a committee to investigate the allocation, by Abu Salmain himself, of 900 million Libyan dinars to the LROR and various other Islamist armed groups. Instead, the LROR had its responsibilities reduced by the GNC but was allowed to continue to operate, and no one was prosecuted for the incident. The kidnapping of Zaidan was believed to be a coup attempt supported by members of the GNC, who was viewed as too moderate. Nouri Abu Salmain has been perceived by some as linked to the Muslim Brotherhood in particular, which he denies. In April 2014, an anti-terrorist training base called Camp 27, located between Tripoli and the Tunisian border, was taken over by forces fighting under the control of Abd al-Muhsin al-Libi, also known as Ibrahim Tantush, a long-serving al-Qaeda organizer and former member of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group. The Islamist forces at Camp 27 were subsequently being described as part of the Libya Shield Force. The Libya Shield Force was already identified by some observers as linked to al-Qaeda as early as 2012, although Islamists were outnumbered by liberals and centrists in the GNC. In May 2014 they lobbied for a law banning virtually everyone who had participated in Gaddafi's government from holding public office. Armed militiamen stormed government ministries to demand the law's passage. The law allowed Islamists to take power, removing from power several of their key rivals, mostly political moderates and technocrats who had served at the end of Gaddafi's reign. Several months later in December, the GNC endorsed Sharia law and voted to extend its mandate. Suppression of women's rights. GNC opponents argue that it was supporting Islamist actions against women. Sadiq Ghariani, the Grand Mufti of Libya, is perceived to be linked closely to Islamist parties. He has issued fatwas ordering Muslims to obey the GNC, and fatwas ordering Muslims to fight against Haftar's forces. He has also issued fatwas restricting women's rights. In March 2013, Sadiq Ghariani, the Grand Mufti, issued a fatwa against the UN report on violence against women and girls. He condemned the UN report for advocating immorality and indecency in addition to rebelliousness against religion and clear objections to the laws contained in the Quran and Sunnah. Later in 2013, lawyer Hamida al-Hadi al-Asfar, advocate of women's rights, was abducted, tortured and killed. It is alleged she was targeted for criticizing the Grand Mufti's declaration. No arrests were made. In June 2013, two politicians, Ali Tekbali and Fathi Saja, appeared in court for insulting Islam, for publishing a cartoon promoting women's rights. Under Sharia law they were facing a possible death penalty. The case caused widespread concern, although they were eventually acquitted in March 2014. After the GNC was forced to accept new elections, Ali Tekbali was elected to the new House of Representatives. During Nouri Abu Samain's presidency of the GNC and subsequent to GNC's decision to enforce Sharia law in December 2013, gender segregation and compulsory hijab were being imposed in Libyan universities from early 2014, provoking strong criticism from women's rights groups. GNC extends its mandate without elections. The GNC failed to stand down at the end of its electoral mandate in January 2014, unilaterally voting on 23 December 2013 to extend its power for at least 1 year. This caused widespread unease and some protests. Residents of the eastern city of Shahat, along with protesters from Bayday and Sousse, staged a large demonstration, rejecting the GNC's extension plan and demanding the resignation of the Congress, followed by a peaceful power transition to a legitimate body. They also protested the lack of security, blaming the GNC for failing to build the army and police. Other Libyans rejecting the proposed mandate rallied in Tripoli's Martyrs Square and outside Benghazi's Tabasti Hotel, calling for the freeze of political parties and the reactivation of the country's security system. On 14 February 2014, General Khalifa Haftar ordered the GNC to dissolve and called for the formation of a caretaker government committee to oversee new elections. However, his actions had little effect on the GNC, which called his actions an attempted coup, and called Haftar himself ridiculous, and labeled him an aspiring dictator. The GNC continued to operate as before. No arrests were made. Haftar launched Operation Dignity 2 months later, on 16 May. New GNC on 25 May 2014, about 1 week after Khalifa Haftar started his Operation Dignity offensive against the General National Congress. That body set 25 June 2014 as the date for elections for a new House of Representatives. Islamists who suffered heavy defeats in the election accused the new Council of Deputies Parliament of being dominated by supporters of the former dictator, and continued to support the GNC after the council when it took office, replacing the GNC on 4 August 2014. Opposing forces. Islamist forces. The Islamist Libyan Dawn has been described as an uneasy coalition, including former al-Qaeda jihadists who fought against Gaddafi in the 90s, Berber ethnic militias, members of Libya's branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, and a network of conservative merchants from Misrata, whose fighters make up the largest bloc of Libya Dawn's forces. The Islamist forces are identified as terrorists by the elective parliament in Tobruk. The city of Zawiya and its associated brigades have been waging operations in western Libya in support of the Libya Dawn coalition. The motivations of the Zawiya Brigade's participation in the war have been described as unrelated to religion and instead deriving foremost from tribal conflict with the Warshafana and secondarily as a result of opposition to the Zintani brigades and General Haftar. The Libya Shield Force supports the Islamists. Its forces are divided geographically into the Western Shield, Central Shield and Eastern Shield. Elements of the Libya Shield Force were identified by some observers as linked to al-Qaeda as early as 2012. The term, Libya Shield 1, is used to refer to the Islamist part of the Libya Shield Force in the east of Libya. In eastern Libya, Islamist armed groups have organized themselves into the Shura Council of Benghazi Revolutionaries. These are Ansar al-Sharia, Libya Shield 1, February 17 Martyrs Brigade, Rafella al-Sahati Brigade. In western Libya, the prominent Islamist forces are the Central Shield, which consists especially of Misrata units, and the Libya Revolutionaries Operations Room. Two smaller organizations operating in western Libya are Ignua al-Kikli and the Lions of Monotheism. Al-Qaeda leader Abd al-Muhsin al-Libi, also known as Ibrahim Ali Abu Bakr or Ibrahim Tantush, has been active in western Libya, capturing the Special Forces base called Camp 27 in April 2014 and losing it to Anti-Islamist Forces in August 2014. The Islamist forces around Camp 27 have been described as both al-Qaeda and as part of the Libya Shield Force. The relationship between al-Qaeda and al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb is unclear, and their relationship with other Libyan Islamist groups is unclear. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb are also active in Fezzan, especially in border areas. The Zawiya disambiguation needed tribe has been allied to Libya Dawn since August 2014, although in June 2014 at least one Zawiya army unit had appeared to side with General Haftar, and reports in December claimed Zawiya forces were openly considering breaking away from Libya Dawn. Zawiya militia have been heavily fighting the Warshafana tribe. In the current conflict, the Warshafana have been strongly identified with the forces fighting against both Libya Dawn and al-Qaeda. Zawiya has been involved in a long-standing tribal conflict with the neighboring Warshafana tribe since 2011. Anti-Islamist forces. The anti-Islamist forces are built around Haftar's faction of the Libyan National Army, including land, sea and air forces. Since the Battle of Tripoli Airport, armed groups associated with Zintan and the surrounding Nafusa region have become prominent. The Airport Security Battalion is recruited in large part from Zintan. The Zintan Brigades fall under the leadership of the Zintan Revolutionaries Military Council. They consist of the QAA Brigade, the Lightning Bolt Brigade, the Civic Brigade. The Airport Security Battalion at Tripoli Airport was linked to the Zintan Brigades. Warshafana tribal armed groups, from the area immediately south and west of Tripoli, have been playing a growing role in the anti-Islamist forces. On the 5th of August, they were reported to have recaptured Camp 27, a training base west of Tripoli, but it had been captured by forces under al-Qaeda organizer Ibrahim Ali Abu Bakr Tantush in April 2014. Warshafana armed groups have also been involved in a long-standing tribal conflict with the neighboring Zawiya city since 2011. Zawiya has been allied to Libya Dawn since August 2014, although its commitment to Libya Dawn is reportedly wavering. A minority portion of the Libya Shield Force is reported to have not joined the Islamist forces. It is not clear if this means they have joined the anti-Islamist forces, although journalists have referred to this group as Libya Shield 2, to distinguish it from the Islamist faction which calls itself Libya Shield 1. It is not clear that this name is commonly used. Taking size on the 19th of May 2014, a number of Libyan military officers announced their support for Gen. Haftar, including officers in an Air Force base in Tobruk, and others who have occupied a significant portion of the country's oil infrastructure, as well as members of an important militia group in Benghazi. On the other hand, several fighters from Misrata moved to Tripoli to counter Haftar's offensive, but this happened after the general managed to gather allies from Bayday, 125 miles east of Benghazi. Additional supporters of the movement include Libya's former Prime Minister Ali Zaidan, ousted by General National Congress's Islamist parties, and Libya's ambassador to the United Nations, who had announced his backing of Haftar's offensive against Islamist lawmakers and extremist militias, just hours after the country's Air Force commander had made a similar move, further building support for a campaign. The current Prime Minister has described Operation Dignity as a coup d'état. The commander of the Army's Special Forces also said he had allied with Haftar. However, the show of support for the general appears to have triggered a heavy backlash, as Libya's Navy Chief Brig. Gen. Hassan Abu Shanik, who also announced his support for Haftar's revolt, was wounded in an assassination attempt in the capital Tripoli along with his driver and a guard. On May 20, the Air Force's headquarters in Tripoli came under a rocket attack, but no casualties were reported. On the 21st of May, the uprising was described by the Washington Post as the most serious challenge to the Libyan authorities since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. The Islamist forces have attempted to secure some support by focusing on a tribal theme, arguing that the elected government is not adequately opposed to the idea of military units led by Zintanis. As a Berber, Amazigh, Nouri Abu Samain's prominence has also secured the Islamists some Berber, Amazigh support. One unnamed pro-Dawn Amazigh commander has apparently claimed, "The majority of Dawn are not Islamist, and we all have different reasons for wanting less Zintani influence in western Libya." Awakening in the Benghazi region. A Salafist group calling itself the Awakening, the Islamic Awakening, or the Awakening of Islam, cooperates with the Tobruk government, specifically in the conflict against the Shura Council of Benghazi revolutionaries. It is not clear what stance the group would take between the Tobruk government and Libya Dawn. The Awakening group appears to a proxy of the Saudi Islamic Awakening movement, which is linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the largest group in the Libya Dawn government. Effects of the war. As of February 2015, damage and disorder from the war has been considerable. There are frequent electric outages, little business activity, and a loss in revenues from oil by 90%. Over 4,000 people have died from the fighting, and some sources claim nearly a third of the country's population has fled to Tunisia as refugees.